Welcome to On the Move.
Hello, Patriots and Preppers. I am Mack, Worley III, and this is On the Move. Thank you for tuning in. It's a weekend following my favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you spent time with your family, had some good food, and did not talk about politics. Why would I say that? Especially considering that I'm the guy that's telling you to get on the move, get out there, and be active in politics. Well, that's easy, because the White House created talking points on Obamacare for us all to talk about with our family during Thanksgiving. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think that this is what this holiday is all about. In my opinion, this is one of the few days out of the year that each one of us should be taking the day off from politics and focus solely on our family. We certainly shouldn't be bringing up talking points about Obamacare. That is nothing but propaganda anyway. Believe it or not, I actually took the entire day off from discussing politics or even getting on the computer, which I'm pretty proud of myself for that, by the way. Anyway, if you'd like to join the conversation today, please give us a call at 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986, or email the show at onthemoveshow@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to check us out at onthemoveshow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, facebook.com/onthemoveshow, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and twitter.com/onthemoveshow. You can also check out our stores on onthemoveshow.com by clicking the shop link on the homepage. We have hundreds of products for sale on there, ranging from freeze-dried food to gear to show merchandise to clothing to drinkware to bumper stickers and so much more. Your purchases will help make On the Move bigger and better. Thank you for your support. All right, moving on. Today, it's going to be a really good show for you guys. I'm very excited about it. We're going to be discussing whether or not we as a country are becoming more or less free. Are we gaining or are we losing freedoms? For the second hour, I'll have a special guest on, Jeff Norton of the Midnight Patriot from themidnightpatriot.com. We'll have an in-depth discussion on whether or not our freedoms are being taken away. We'll also be taking listener calls and reading your emails. Okay, so as a society, are we becoming more free or are we becoming less free? Before we attempt to answer this question, let's get some historical context first. You know me, history buff, can't help but bring it backwards here. So, upon exiting the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was approached by a group of citizens asking what sort of government the delegates had created. His answer was, a republic, if you can keep it. America is not a democracy and never was. Karl Marx, who was a German philosopher who authored the Communist Manifesto and is now considered the father of modern-day socialism, once said, democracy is the road to socialism. Democracy is a tyrannical form of government where the majority can impose its will on the minority. Benjamin Franklin also said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. America is a constitutional republic with democratic tendencies. What this means is we as citizens are responsible for electing people who represent our values. We are supposed to remain aware of what our leaders are doing and hold them accountable, hold their feet to the fire, so to speak. If they violate our rights, we're required to rally against their tyranny and elect new representatives or even impeach the violators if necessary. Benjamin Franklin knew that it would require an active and educated populace to protect the republic. He knew that the rights of the individual would erode as the power of the government grew. Thomas Jefferson once said, educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of liberty. This is why it is up to each of us to pull back on the reins of government. We must ensnare them in as much red tape as possible, using checks and balances to prevent one branch or person from obtaining too much power. Let's look at those checks and balances. We all know the U.S. government is broken up into three branches: the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches. Let's do a quick review on civics real quick. The legislative branch is given powers to make laws, and it has the following checks on the executive branch. It may override presidential vetoes with a 2/3 vote. It has the power over the purse strings to actually fund any executive actions. It may remove the president through impeachment. The Senate approves treaties and also approves presidential appointments. The legislative branch has the following checks over the judicial branch. They create the lower courts. They may remove judges through impeachment, and the Senate approves appointments of judges. The executive branch is given the power to carry out the laws, and it has the following checks over the legislative branch. It has the power to veto, the ability to call special sessions of Congress. It can recommend legislation, and it can appeal to the people concerning legislation and more. The executive branch has the following checks over the judicial branch. The president can appoint Supreme Court judges and other federal judges. The judicial branch is given the power to interpret laws. It has the following checks over the executive branch. Judges, once appointed for life, are free from the control of the executive branch. Courts can judge executive actions to be unconstitutional through the power of the judicial review. They also have the following check over the legislative branch. The courts can judge legislative acts to be unconstitutional. Okay, so with that in mind, let's ask ourselves a question. Has any branch or person gained or lost power since the founding of our great nation? Have we lost any of those checks and balances? Well, let's take a look at Obama and the Affordable Care Act. We now have a president who decides what laws he will enforce. He changes the laws as he sees fit. He's on record showing his disdain for checks and balances. He says that if the Congress won't act, he will. And if you don't believe me, here's his own words. If I can find it, give me 1 second here.
It's wrong. And I refuse to take no for an answer. These are ideas that have support from Democrats. They have support from Republicans around the country, independents around the country. I want to work with Congress to get them done. But when Congress refuses to act, and as a result hurts our economy and puts our people at risk, then I have an obligation as president to do what I can without them.
Wait a second. I just want to play that last part one more time just to make sure we heard that correctly.
But when Congress refuses to act, and as a result hurts our economy and puts our people at risk, then I have an obligation as president to do what I can without them.
So there you have it, folks. Right from the horse's mouth. In that clip, Obama was discussing how he will go around Congress to get his people appointed to positions in the federal departments. So, right now we've been having a situation where the Republicans have been blocking appointments from him that they don't want in the numerous offices. This has been something that both parties have done in the past. But let's be clear on this. Just because he says he has an obligation does not make it true. He does not have the constitutional authority to bypass Congress. These checks and balances were put there for a reason. The executive order wasn't put there for the president to use as a means to bypass checks and balances. Yes, the president can use executive orders to help officers and agencies of the executive branch manage the operations within the federal government itself. However, as we just discussed, the Senate approves presidential appointments. And this isn't the first time that he said something like this. Here he is again in January of 2010, April, May, and July of 2011.
The Senate blocked a bill that would have created this commission. So I'll issue an executive order that will allow us to go forward, because I refuse to pass this problem on to another generation of Americans. I know some here wish that I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. I know there's some folks who wish I could just bypass Congress I can. Now, I know some people want me to bypass Congress and change the laws on my own. Believe me. And believe me, right now dealing with Congress, the idea but believe me, the idea of doing things on my own is very tempting.
The Democrats and Obama have forced the Affordable Health Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, on the American people. They did this without a single Republican vote. They have made it so that you have to purchase a product in order to be a law-abiding citizen. They snuck so much stuff into this bill to confuse and disorient your average citizen that most people still don't know what's in its thousands of pages. And then we have people like Nancy Pelosi who tell us stuff like this.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
We have to pass it to find out what's in it? That doesn't make any sense at all. This is the kind of stuff that they're doing behind our backs and in some cases right in front of our faces. How has this not been stopped? Well, it went to the Supreme Court. Proponents of Obamacare say the Supreme Court ruled Obamacare is constitutional. And because of that, we should stop arguing and we should just give up. It's the law of the land. Well, you know what? That hasn't stopped them from fighting us on gun control for 200 years. That's been the law of the land. I mean, that's over 200 years. Well, you know what? Even with what the Supreme Court ruling that Obamacare is constitutional, I don't put too much stock into that. This is the same court that was responsible for notorious rulings in Dred Scott versus Sanford, which endorsed slavery, Plessy versus Ferguson, which ruled segregation as constitutional, and last but not least, Korematsu versus the United States, which upheld the imprisonment of Japanese Americans in concentration camps during World War II. The question of whether or not Obamacare is or is not constitutional is not what I'm trying to answer, at least not today. The fact is, before Obamacare, we had more freedom. We could choose not to have health insurance if that's what we wanted, without having to pay a tax or a penalty, depending on which way they're trying to justify it. We could pick the health care plan of our choosing, even if it only covered us for catastrophic events. Employers could hire as many employees as they wanted without fear of being mandated to cover the health care of those employees unless they chose to and could afford to. They didn't have to fear paying a tax when they could not afford to pay for the health care of their employees. Why in the world would we tax someone who already doesn't have the money to pay for something? Employers had more freedom over how many people could work for them and how many hours those people could work. Obamacare is not only taking away choices of how we live our lives, but it's also the biggest killer of jobs in America. I could go on for hours about Obamacare, but that's not what this show is about. I just thought I'd touch on it. Okay, so on the last show, I discussed how the Senate changed the rules of the filibuster. For those of you who don't know, the filibuster is a delay tactic that's been used in Congress to delay and block legislation or presidential nominees. This is used to prevent the minority party from being walked all over in Congress. It allows them to have a voice. It allows them to speak up and actually get their point out there. They may or may not get listened to, and it's possible that they can use this method to actually block legislation and presidential nominees. They can drag out the time by talking to a point where the window of time that allows for people to vote is gone. But in some cases, it doesn't do that. It just gives them an opportunity to speak, basically. Harry Reid and the Democrats have been trying to do everything they can to get rid of this. Harry Reid and the Democrats have made it so now they only need a simple majority vote of 51% in order to block the filibuster. The old rules required a supermajority of 60%. So what did Obama have to say about the filibuster rule change? Well, here's a clip of him on November 21st, 2013.
Over the past 5 years, we've seen an unprecedented pattern of obstruction in Congress that's prevented too much of the American people's business from getting done. It's harmed our economy, and it's been harmful to our democracy. And it's brought us to the point where a simple majority vote no longer seems to be sufficient for anything, even routine business, through what is supposed to be the world's greatest deliberative body. I realize that neither party has been blameless for these tactics. They've developed over years, and it seems as if they've continually escalated. But today's pattern of obstruction, it just isn't normal. It's not what our founders envisioned. A deliberate and determined effort to obstruct everything, no matter what the merits, just to refight the results of an election, is not normal. And for the sake of future generations, we can't let it become normal. So, I support the step a majority of senators today took to change the way that Washington is doing business, more specifically the way the Senate does business.
Man, he sure can read from a teleprompter. So, Obama supports changing the rules of the Senate, which will practically eliminate the use of the filibusters. But wait, remember back to 2005 when the Republicans threatened to do the very same thing that the Democrats just did? Which, for the record, they didn't follow through with that. Well, I do. Here is Senator Barack Obama and what he had to say about it.
The American people sent us here to be their voice. They understand that those voices can at times become loud and argumentative, but they also hope that we can disagree without being disagreeable. What they don't expect is for one party, be it Republican or Democrat, to change the rules in the middle of the game so that they can make all the decisions while the other party is told to sit down and keep quiet. The American people want less partisanship in this town, but everyone in this chamber knows that if the majority chooses to end the filibuster, if they choose to change the rules and put an end to democratic debate, then the fighting and the bitterness and the gridlock will only get worse. Now, I understand that Republicans are getting a lot of pressure to do this from factions outside the chamber, but we need to rise above the ends justify the means mentality, because we're here to answer to the people, all of the people, not just the ones that are wearing our particular party label. If the right of free and open debate is taken away from the minority party and the millions of Americans who ask us to be their voice, I fear that the already partisan atmosphere in Washington will be poisoned to the point where no one will be able to agree on anything. That doesn't serve anyone's best interest, and it certainly isn't what the patriots who founded this democracy had in mind. We owe the people who sent us here more than that. We owe them much more.
You certainly do owe us much more than this. But then again, you get the government that you deserve. We are becoming more apathetic every year in this country. We care more about what celebrities are doing than what our elected officials are doing behind our backs. I know this isn't a freedom that we as citizens have lost, but it is a right that our elected officials, who are supposed to represent us, have lost. Now the minority is being told to sit down and keep quiet, as our president most eloquently put. Make no mistake, this is a power grab, and this will be used to infringe on more of our rights. What I don't understand is why the Democrats can't see that. Giving up all this power from the minority, putting the majority in a position where they have total dominance, it cuts both ways. One day they're going to be out of power, and then they'll be in the same boat that the Republicans are in. This isn't good for anyone, and the real loser of this is, as always, the American people. Anyway, at this point, guys, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. I appreciate y'all hanging with me, and I will be back in about 1 minute 30.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
And we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. All right, so let's talk again about the NSA. I know, I've covered this topic to exhaustion. But if we're talking about the loss of freedoms, we have to talk about the National Security Agency. Patrick Henry once said, the liberties of a people never were, nor ever will be secure when the transactions of their rulers may be concealed from them. This is exactly what we're facing today. The government is now able to spy on every person in the world. They monitor every phone call, text message, email, internet search, website visited, and they now have the capability to monitor every keystroke you make on a computer. They monitor all electronic communications. They only answer to secret courts. We, the people, are not allowed to know what goes on behind those closed doors. We're now living in a police state worse than even 1984 predicted. They don't require search warrants. They blatantly violate the Fourth Amendment, which states the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. They keep all this information they compile on each and every one of us in these huge data mining centers that they're building in Utah. Any of this information can be recalled at any point to be used against you in court. As I've said before, even if you are innocent, they can use this information to make you look like you're guilty. You may be saying to yourself, I have nothing to hide. Well, I'm sure that the Jews in Germany said the same thing when Hitler started having censors go through their mail. Remember Benjamin Franklin's warning. This is how we lose the republic. Apathy will destroy this republic only if we allow it to. There will always be a threat, and because of that, there will always be people who will react out of fear. This is why we have checks and balances in place to prevent those who would react emotionally from giving up power to one man or branch. We're supposed to have these things to slow down the process so that it can take a little longer for us to get stuff through. This gives us time to debate it, to talk about it, find out if it's really right or if it's really not right for us. It also gives time for people to find out what's going on. The worst thing that we can do is just to push something through without people reading it. That sounds an awful lot like what happened to Obamacare, isn't it? All these people didn't even know what was in this document. And let me remind you one more time, we have people like Nancy Pelosi who said this.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
This is my whole point exactly, is that these people are really just stripping away our rights, and they're using the fog of controversy to do it. Our founders were worried that one man would come in and claim to have all the answers to our problems, and that the people would rush to him and give him full control over the government to end a crisis. They called this man the man on the white horse.
And I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. One of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him.
That's the only man on the white horse I've ever heard of, and I don't want to let the NSA become our man on a white horse. We must not let our government or representatives keep chipping away at our freedoms and liberties. History shows us that government will use threats as a means of usurping power. If we allow them to keep consolidating power and violating the sovereignty of states and individuals, we're allowing them to become a greater threat than what they are claiming to protect us from. If you can't tell by now, I love quotes. So here's another one from Ben Franklin. Freedom is a gift bestowed, freedom is not a gift bestowed upon us by other men, but a right that belongs to us by the laws of God and nature. Our government is not gifting us with freedom. We are already naturally free. The Constitution does not give us liberties. It simply enumerates human rights that we already possess. And what power do you think that the government has over you, really? We are the government. The states are also the government. The federal government is nothing without the states and the people. Power is an illusion. They're only powerful because we think that they're powerful. But if we decided, hey, we're not going to listen to that. If a sheriff decides he's not going to enforce an unconstitutional law, what power does somebody have? Maybe this can be something that would be fought between state and local levels, but if all states start doing this, the federal government is nothing. They're a little speck in D.C. What power do they have if people realize that they're pushing out unconstitutional laws and they just choose not to follow them or, obey that authority? Then it's not really power at all, is it? The people that we have in power and the government in general use that illusion of power at the end of a gun, at the barrel of a gun. They do this using coercion. That's the only way the government gets anything done, is regulation and coercion. I know this is kind of off topic, but why do we stand for a judge in court? Why do we all have to rise when he or she enters the room? Why do we call them Your Honor? People say we must respect the office. Why? Are these people government officials? Or are they public servants? This is a distinction that I think some may need some clarification on. Respect for public offices, but not to the point of servitude. I will not bow my head or bend my knee for any man of flesh and blood. Have we created the noble class that we came to America seeking freedom from? We've given our lawyers noble titles. Oh, you don't believe me? What does Esquire mean? It's a courtesy title used in the United States largely for lawyers and the United Kingdom for certain members of the gentry. What is gentry? Gentry denotes well-born and well-bred people of high social class. This is what is cracking me up, is that people seem so willing to submit to authority figures. We've been conditioned all of our lives to let people in public office boss us around and violate our rights without even thinking about if they can or should. Like I said, this is kind of off topic, but it's something to think about. So, what else have we lost? We can't talk about losing freedoms without mentioning gun control. So, the Second Amendment states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. Well, then how do we justify all the infringements that we now have? According to the Second Amendment, any gun law is unconstitutional. Because that would technically be an infringement, would it not? I'm not sure. Well, so what do we see today? we now have policies that resemble communist China more than the America that our founders have created. We have people like Democrat Dianne Feinstein on the wrong side of history, but she seems comfortable on that side because that's where she typically is. They want to take every weapon away from law-abiding citizens. Here she is in her own words.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it.
She would turn in all of your guns. It seems like they're getting bolder and bolder in what they're willing to say, and it's because we haven't come after them. We haven't done anything to punish them for what they're doing. This is a clear violation of the Constitution. This woman misinterprets the Constitution to whatever thing that she wants. You know, she could reinterpret it to say that we have to, bow down and worship her if it suited her needs, which one day it very well may. Who do these people think that they are? They seem to think that we work for them. They must have forgotten that they work for us. We're not their servants. They serve us. They volunteer to become public servants. No one forced them into this line of work. They should be doing what is best for the Republic. Instead, they scheme and plot to undermine it. They consider themselves a higher class of ruling nobility, the modern-day gentry. So who else used gun control to violate rights and seize power? In Hitler's Table Talk, 1941 to 1944, Secret Conversations, Hitler said, "The most foolish mistake we could possibly make would be to allow the subject races to possess arms. History shows us that all conquerors who have allowed their subject races to carry arms have prepared their own downfall by doing so." Hitler established the first regulations of German citizenship law on 14 November 1935. Well, that's not too long ago as far as this month, 14 November. That is crazy. It said Jews are prohibited from acquiring, possessing, and carrying firearms and ammunition, as well as truncheons or stabbing weapons. Those now possessing weapons and ammunition are at once to turn them over to the local police authority. We must resist the shackles that our government attempts to restrain us with. But some people seem so willing to jump right into those shackles. We've compromised away our rights in order to appease these people, the anti-gunners. But there's no pleasing them. As you've just heard, they want them all. They don't want to compromise. No amount of compromising will work. What have we compromised already? We now can't carry guns anywhere and everywhere like we were able to in the past. In some places, we have to be licensed to even carry a firearm at all. Which, by the way, what is the point of having a right if you have to be licensed in order to assert that right? This is just another way of being taxed and controlled. We have to have a permit to conceal our weapon, which you have to pay for. This is, again, just another tax. And in some places, they can deny your permit for practically any reason they decide. You don't have a right to do it. You have to prove a need to do it. And if you're denied mistakenly, you have to go through an extremely long appeal process in order to get reevaluated. If you're in prison for a non-violent felony and they release you after you've paid your debt to society, remember, that's what we say. You've paid your debt to society. You're now denied the right to bear arms. I don't recall anything in the Second Amendment that said, shall not be infringed unless you commit a felony. We have states and cities that ban certain types of semi-automatic firearms such as AR-15s, AK-47s, and other kind of long rifles. We have so many other restrictions that people who don't know a thing about firearms are pushing down our throats. I'm telling you, it's going to come to the point where we're going to lose all of our freedoms if we don't do something. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and I will be right back, and I'll talk about what we need to do in order to not lose all of our freedoms. I'll be right back.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. And just to mention about that commercial that you just heard, if you guys, we have more shops than just the one at cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. If you go to onthemoveshow.com and click on the shops button or the shop button on the homepage, we have all of our stores listed there, and you can check out all of our merchandise. I have an affiliate with the freeze dry guy, and that basically gets me a 10% commission on purchases that you guys would make. It doesn't increase your price any from going through these guys, and I really like the freeze dry guy. I've used these guys, and I've had them as my affiliate because I value their products. They have really affordable stuff on there with freeze-dried food and survival stuff. And, that stuff is going to be really important in the coming days if there's ever some kind of emergency that would require it. And as I've said on my last show, it's pretty good odds that something in our lifetime is going to happen to where we're going to need to tap into that kind of stuff. So if you want to check it out, like I said, it's at onthemoveshow.com. In the shop section. I believe it's the first graphic that I have listed there. So, yeah. And anything that you buy, like I said, I'll be getting a small commission on, and, that commission will go towards making this podcast bigger and better. So I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much. So where do we leave off? We need to make a stand. There is a lot going on, like I was saying, and we need to stand up and actually do something to assert our rights and to make sure we don't lose any more. We need to make a stand. We must fight to get all of our rights back. We must not simply be satisfied with not losing what little rights we still possess. The anti-gunners will not tire. Their ilk have been trying to impose controls on the populace for over 100 years as means of gaining full control. They do not tire. They do not stop. They will keep pushing gun control until they confiscate every last firearm. Again, just take Dianne Feinstein's word for it. If any side of this debate refuses to compromise, it's the anti-gunners. Ask yourself, what have they compromised on? If you ask them, they would say they've allowed us to keep the firearms we now have. Well, gee, thanks for allowing us to keep the firearms that we already have a constitutional right to keep and bear. That was mighty nice of you. But wait, you're still actively trying to get those too, so never mind. We cannot grow tired of this fight. We must stay informed and stay on the offensive. What I mean by this is we need to join groups that support the bearing of firearms. We need to join groups. Some people have an issue with the NRA. I'm a member of the NRA. They're not real big on open carry, which I'm not a fan of. But as I've said before, I'm not going to leave the NRA because they don't support the right to open carry as much as, let's say, the Gun Owners of America, which, by the way, I would absolutely be a member of them if I had the money to drop into that again. But alas, I do not. So the reason why I'm staying with the NRA is because the NRA is doing a lot of big things with it, for firearms freedoms. However, they are what the membership makes them. They are what we make them. So if we are a group of people who support open carry and, constitutional carry, where we don't need a permit to, carry a firearm, period, or we don't need a permit to conceal carry, if we are that, that is what they will be. One reason why they're not a no-compromise organization like the Gun Owners of America is because a lot of their members are kind of like the old guard. I'm the new guard. I believe in firearms freedom. I believe that no gun law is really constitutional, and we are a constitutional republic, so we need to abolish gun laws, in my personal opinion. Now, you may disagree with me, and I know this is a hot-button issue. Believe me, that's not what this conversation is about today. That's a conversation for another day. I'll get into that on another podcast. So what I mean by we need to get informed and stay on the offensive is that we must present legislation to increase our firearm freedoms. We must compel our elected representatives with threat of removal from office to support the reaffirmation of our liberties. We must fight with every fiber of our beings any legislation that would seek to restrain our rights and then force the removal of all those from office who supported such legislation. We must become a patriot wave, as Ted Cruz said, one capable of washing away the tyranny of our time and refreshing anew the tree of liberty. Samuel Adams once said, "If ye love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you, and may posterity forget our countrymen." Samuel Adams also said, "If ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall possess the highest seats in the government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriot to prevent pain. Our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent the ruin." It's ruin. Man, I can't read that. Anyway, this is what it's about right here, is that we have to come together to try to stay active as a community. That's what this podcast is all about, Get on the move, build networks of people, become that patriot wave. We're going to need our experienced patriot to prevent the ruin of our republic that Benjamin Franklin warned us about. It's going to take each and every one of us, really kicking it into high gear and making sure that we hold our elected officials accountable for what they do and don't do. This is deadly serious. We could be the last generation to be allowed to have firearms. We could squander the gifts that are not the gifts, the freedoms that our founding fathers fought and died for. Blood was shed over these freedoms, and we're just so willing to let them go, to give them up. Anyway, if you'd like to join the conversation, the number is 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. All right, so as I spoke about in the previous episode, our government is attacking our freedom of speech. And I'm going to cover that in a few moments here after I take a real quick commercial. I will be right back, and thanks for sticking around.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
All right, everybody. I appreciate you staying with us here. I have my caller on the line. His name is Josh from Battleground, Washington, and I'm putting him on the line. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, man. Love the show so far. Heard you talking about the anti-gunners out there. Those horrible people, I'll tell you. But I wanted to make some history points on some of the stuff you'd covered. You talked about the 1935 Jewish Citizen Act that restricted the arms of the Jewish citizens in Germany.
Okay.
Well, actually, what's crazy about that is in 1968, one of our trustworthy elected officials actually went and took that exact legislation from the archives up there in Washington and transferred the language into the 1968 Firearms Act.
I'm assuming they
wanted to give that a little bit.
Jewish citizens removing their guns, right? They just said all Americans or something like that?
They basically just changed the wordage a little bit towards certain American groups, targeted blacks mostly. So, that just goes to show, some nasty people can get up there in office, and we just got to start get on the move, like you say, start activating, getting together, just band together is what it's about.
Absolutely.
Wake people up and band together.
Absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to talk about is shall not be infringed. And, there's lots of restrictions. You could go on for days about the restrictions in different states and municipalities on the Second Amendment. And people say, well, what if someone uses a gun to murder someone? They shouldn't have their gun rights given back, right? And I said, well, no, they should be put in prison forever. I mean, it shall not be infringed.
Exactly.
There's no way around it.
Exactly.
Felonies should not have a justification.
Yeah, and the problem we're right now, it's especially, it's going to lead to another topic here, is the prison industrial complex. We have a system right now where we bog down our prison system with nonviolent criminals who have no real business being there in the first place. So we have it so we can't keep the murderers in jail forever. Honestly, if you murder somebody, I don't think you should ever get out of jail. And honestly, I think if you use a firearm and you're found guilty of using that firearm in a violent crime, I don't think you should ever get out of jail, because if you've done that, that's a trait in a person that can't really be rehabilitated out. Maybe give them the potential for that, but honestly, that's so far past the argument that we're making as far as restricting firearms. Again,
right,
I was talking.
Right. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking about compromising earlier as far as how easy it is for us to compromise our rights away. Here I am already saying, hey, it'd be easy for us to compromise that. But you know what? Keep them in jail forever. Those people committed a violent crime with that gun. I think they don't deserve to get out of jail. But if we freed up, our prisons.
Yeah. or adjudicate them. I mean, I understand the process of adjudication as well. The person maybe just need to be adjudicated. Because they're not all there. It depends on the charge and the crime, of course. But to get off that, because that can go on forever, is you had talked about the NRA, how they're not a fan of open carry. I open carry every day, of course, you know that. They don't particularly, but they're standing up for people's rights. They're lobbying for people's rights. And another big organization that isn't talked about as much is Gun Owners of America, which was formed in the 60s to protect our rights. Get behind Gun Owners of America, people. It's a great organization. Larry Pratt, I stand with him. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
and like I said,
they're
a no compromise organization than what's out there, though. So I'd highly recommend anybody join them. But like I said, I'm staying a member of the NRA. I don't plan on dropping it. I want to change from within. So
yeah, absolutely. Those were just a couple points that came up in my mind, at least. So, I mean, we're under attack. First Amendment. Man, 100 people on Black Friday were arrested for exercising their First Amendment. So, I mean, we're under attack, people. That's all I know. So,
what happened?
With that, I think I'm going to... what had happened, apparently the unions, I don't know the politics of it, the unions were put up to this task of basically the UFCW was going around and getting some guys together to petition Walmart for higher wages and a number of other things. And in the process of doing that, Walmart backlashed with their, you're on our private property crud, and they were peacefully assembled. And so a bunch of them went to jail or got tickets in several states. So I don't know, but there's some political stuff about it because of the unions. Some people aren't a fan of unions. But all I know is it was a direct violation of the First Amendment, and that's all I understand and care about, really. So
yeah. Well, I also heard that there was some restricting of a church that was trying to give food to the homeless somewhere. I briefly read the story. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was in Austin, Texas. That was in Austin, Texas. That was one of the stories that Infowars.com had covered. And, they basically were kicked out of a public park, public, for trying to feed these homeless people. And they were, threatened with citations or what have you. So it's gotten out of control. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were probably threatened with being arrested for trespassing, even though they're staying on public property. I've heard of that before once or twice.
I mean, they're doing other things too. So, yeah, I'm freezing. I'm outside so I can get service. But like you were saying, we have to come together. We have to get on the move. We have to build our networks of fellow patriots and become that patriot wave that I was talking about, that Ted Cruz was talking about, and actually, hold people's feet to the fire, hold them accountable. You hold the feet to the fire, but in a modest, responsible way, and just keep on building the force of good patriotism.
Absolutely.
Just clean patriotism. You know what I mean? Stand up for your rights, but don't go extreme or anything. But just like open carry groups, human rights groups. Just on your Facebook, I share about 50 articles a day if I can, just trying to show people what's going on so that they can maybe start to think, plant a seed. So, I manage the page Restore the Republic Now, kind of a title that gets people thinking. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've helped me a lot with that, so I appreciate that.
No worries.
That's basically all I have to say about that.
All right. Well, I appreciate you calling in. I got a question for you. One last question before you go.
Right.
What does it mean to you to be a patriot?
It's just to, in the times we're in, to be a patriot and to understand what a patriot it just pays respects to all of our forefathers and anybody who's fought for liberty before us. Martin Luther King, anybody who's fought for liberty, and liberty meaning human rights, inalienable rights that we call inherent rights that are outlined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. It just is an honor thing. It should be natural. It should be natural. You should know right and wrong, and it's a right and wrong thing. Being a patriot means the world to me. So
great. Well, thank you. That was a great call. I really appreciate it.
It's a moral thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll let you go. And I'll
all righty, man. Have a great one. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, later.
All right. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and take another quick commercial break here, and I will be right back.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
All right, we are back. I really appreciate you guys sticking with us here. We have a special guest on the show here, guys. Like I said, it's the beginning, almost the beginning of the second hour here. It's close enough for me. Jeff Norton of the MidnightPatriot.com. He is joining us here, and we're going to discuss whether or not we're gaining or losing freedoms. I'm putting him on the line now. Here you are, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mack. And yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. You accepted my invitation to the show. I've been a listener of your show for a little while here, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think you have a really sensible head on your shoulders, and I just like hearing your opinion. So again, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, and I appreciate the kind words. Sometimes I kind of question myself every once in a while, and everything. But I just want to say thank you. Thanks for inviting me, obviously, and everything to be on your show. But the other thing is that, thank you for taking up the banner and hosting your own show to get the word out on the weekends, and hopefully we'll get you in the week and everything. But this is what it takes. It's one thing, and I've always been an advocate of this. It's one thing to sit there and post things on Facebook or wherever social media you're going to do. It's another thing to get into the fight. And my hat's off to you for getting into the fight, my friend.
I appreciate that, yeah. And one of the things I actually wanted to ask you is, I don't know your backstory so much. What actually got you into, talk radio, politics, stuff like that?
Here you go. I'll give you the backstory. We really don't talk a whole lot about it during my show and stuff because it's usually it's the guest. So let's turn the tables and everything. I'll give you. I started out, believe it or not, I actually enlisted in the United States Navy when I was 18 years of age. And,
thank you for your service.
Well, let me tell you, there's more to it. So, to the chagrins of my father, this was actually during the Gulf War in 1991, or actually it was 1991. And to the chagrins of my father, who was Air Force, didn't want his son going off to war. My dad grew up in the Vietnam era and everything like that. And, just to be truthful, a bunch of us went down to the Navy recruiter. We were kind of drinking, having a good time and stuff. So my father was able to convince the recruiters that we were a little inebriated or and couldn't serve. So I was actually very bummed out about it. Of course, then I got threatened with an inch of my life if I ever enlisted in the military again. My father just, like I said, I love my father to death now, but when I was younger, we always butt heads. But one of his many jobs is that he was a radiologist in the Air Force, a radiology tech, and he saw, stationed in Japan and stuff, he saw the horrors of war. Part of their jobs were to process the bodies and ship them home and everything, and it just, he saw it firsthand, and he just didn't want his sons being a part of that, and especially with the Gulf War. So, I argued with him, and I said, Dad, I still want to serve, and I had a great skill with computers. Very early on, I showed a high aptitude for it and everything. So I actually got a job as a GC, as a government contractor, working on a system called Warlord, which is the communication system for the United States Army at the time there at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And then from there, it grew into, doing different software applications development. I did do work. I have done work for Homeland Security, DOD, developing algorithms. I do own a patent on speech recognition software.
Oh, wow.
An algorithm that's actually being used wherever it got, it has moved on. So I have an extensive background in technology. And, I saw some things. I saw some really scary things. And this was actually under President Bush. I worked on 2 projects. One of them was a critical incident management system, which is used by the 5th CST here in Illinois to manage assets in the case of a biological nuclear war scenario and chemical weapons scenario. And it was just basically a digital, you see on TV the screen boards, where you see the screens and people are able to move, on the TV monitors, assets, the future. Well, we actually developed that.
Oh, wow.
I worked for a company as a contractor, and I was the lead developer on that. That was actually a good project. I didn't mind doing that, but then they moved me. What happened was because of a glitch in the funding and grant work, they moved me over to a product called Guardian. And Guardian was a project in which they were looking at people's medical records in the hospital systems in the Chicago, Illinois area. They actually had a joint grant with a couple of the universities and hospitals. So we were actually intrusively looking into people's medical records. Now, the premise behind the whole project was that they were going to help doctors or assist doctors if there was a biological, nuclear attack or chemical attack or whatever it was, that they were going to, because doctors weren't trained on the symptomology of those types of attacks, that they would actually, this computer system would then go and say, well, this person was exposed to anthrax because of the symptomology. And, it all sounded good on the surface, but the problem is the vast amount of data that we were seeing being stored. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If XYZ patient went into the doctor's office and or the emergency room, they had a broken arm, why are we storing that? Why are we keeping that? The other thing too is why is there a need to do a Google map of where the person lived? Why is that? And I raised the question. Yeah, and this was back. This literally was back in like 2007. Can
you imagine how much worse it's gotten since then?
Oh, I know. Trust me. I know how worse it's gotten.
Yeah. Oh, we have Obamacare doing the same thing. They've created this big database of all of our health records, basically doing the same thing. And who knows what is actually going on within that as well? Yep.
No, I can tell you. I know exactly because I was, like I said, I was an insider, and then, I just didn't feel good about what I was doing, and I started studying history a little bit more and started investigating, and then, started to realize that IBM was doing the same thing under Hitler. Hitler, a lot of people don't realize this, but Hitler first got control of the healthcare system in Germany, and then started to do his tyranny.
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense. If you control somebody's healthcare, you control every aspect of their life, basically, because you can decide what they eat. what kind of car they drive, where they live.
Yep. And a lot of people don't realize that. They just don't. I still run into friends and family. Well, it's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect. And like it is. It's going to affect you. And we try to tell them. So that's in a nutshell my back. So I am an insider. I did work with those guys. I know. I know the interagency fights for funding, and I've seen it firsthand. I mean, with working with the FIST CST and the chemical response units and some of the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people don't realize this. The National Guard, they think it's a voluntary service, and it is. It is a voluntary service, but there are full-time National Guard units. These are individuals, or these are military individuals that are full-time, just like standard normal Army.
Yeah, they're active duty.
Or Guard, and they're active duty for all practical purposes. They are active duty, and it's so I got to travel around with them and see some things, and my eyes got woken up. I understand the balance of security and the balance of personal freedoms and stuff. I will tell you this, though, is that since then, this is the thing that always comes back to me of recent, is that they have not, and when I say they, the government has not been able to produce one terrorist plot that they have stopped or infiltrated since they've implemented these systems. Not one. And you would think that if they did, they would be, they haven't. And they say it's top secret. No, it's they haven't, because this PR machine that our government has, if they think that they can get a pass in the invasiveness of our civil liberties and say, well, look, we protected you from this bombing, or we protected you from that bombing, or we protected you from this attack or that attack, they keep on telling you there's wolves at your door, but they haven't been able to produce any wolves. I mean,
well, the only wolves that they've been able to stop, the only attacks that they've actually been stopping, are the ones that they're directly involved in, using entrapment to get people to do things that they probably wouldn't have normally done to begin with, because they weren't as motivated or skilled. So they provide people using the FBI these skills and expertise to do these kind of things, and then they arrest them, when they try to blow up a fake bomb.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, is that's a lot of listeners, because they'll go back and say, well, these bombings are. You got to understand, FBI agents are agents just through normal, detective work or infiltration or whatever work. They got into those units or into those cells by that means, not by listening to you and I, not by listening to our cell phones. I mean, that's not. And this whole technology about cell phone, we used to play a game when we would travel called cell phone bingo. And basically what it was is that we would have a list of 12 phrases or 12 words. And as we were traveling across the country, going from one site to another, we used to listen to cell phone conversations. And when people would mention certain words or whatever like that, we would scratch them off our list. I mean, it was a game that we used to play, years ago. Yeah. And this is played within certain agencies. I mean, and for people to sit there and say, well, I can't believe, look, you got human beings who are inquisitive, who are, we're all human. And, to us, at the time, we thought it was a game, right? Is this fun cell phone bingo, something to pass the time as we're driving, 13, 14 hours nonstop. But then you realize after that, when you grow up a little bit and you grow a little bit wiser and you kind of, become awoken to what's going on, you realize that's not cool.
Isn't it a crazy feeling to have that wool pulled over your eyes? That moment for me, that was one of the most grand moments I've had in my life. I just started looking around me and realizing, things aren't quite how they should be. This isn't what I was taught in my history class. And, even in my history class, it wasn't even really taught that much, but I had a more noble impression of our government, what is actually going on behind closed doors.
Well, and that's the thing, is that when you got, I'm an outsider now. I mean, so I can't really talk to the people, but I still have friends, and that are in the business. I mean, in our community, it's a fairly small community. I mean, I currently obviously do the radio show, and that's my full-time job, I would say, and stuff. But I still have other ventures and different things that I'm involved with, and so I still come across certain individuals, who are still in the know, and it's funny because you don't ever ask. It's kind of like they say, Fight Club. You don't ever talk. The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club, and that's that's how I kind of gauge where we're going, is what they're not talking about. If I'm sitting there, here's a good example. We all know that the government is has been purchasing large quantities, or supposedly purchasing large quantities of ammunition. Correct? I mean, we all know it's been reported out there.
Yeah, I mean, we just follow the money.
Well, hold on. So all right, so it's not as dubious. Like I said, I'm not one out there to cry chicken little. That's not the nature of our show. Is that we just want to give people the facts, and we want to have sensible arguments, and not just off the wall to kind of for ratings. It's not all about ratings with us. It's just about getting the information out there. So I was talking to a few of my buddies who are in the know, and I just flat out asked them, I said, why is the government, why is the Weather Service buying so many rounds of ammunition? The weather, NOAA, why are they buying all this ammunition? And if I knew if there was something that was there, my buddies would have said either A, Jeff, we can't talk about it, or B, you're full of crap, just leave it alone. And that's how you kind of know. Like I said, it's what they don't tell you or what they don't say that makes that sends off the flags, because these guys, obviously have security clearances. They know that I'm on the. So if they don't want to discuss it, but they came back and they actually discussed it, and they made a very sensible argument. They said, look, think about during a natural disaster, especially a weather event. The Weather Service has the ability to take over, and there's certain sites in the United States that actually have direct uplinks to satellite systems. During the time of an emergency, they have to protect those sites. Obviously, those sites are sensitive to communications and everything. So, believe it or not, NOAA, National Weather Service, they actually have an armed guard service, and those armed guards, are responsible for protecting those sites. And so, to me, by them telling me that. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's disinformation. No, I know these guys. Like I said, if they didn't want to talk about it, they would have given me the big, shut the F up, or they just wouldn't have said anything. These guys,
would you agree that it's possible that they may not even know? Like, they may just be telling you and regurgitating what they're told?
Oh, no. These guys, when I tell you I'm in the know, these guys would know. I will tell you specifically. These guys are ex-military, ex-special forces guys, and like I said, these are buddies of mine. I mean, I've developed a lot of relationships, especially with you can imagine me working, like I said, when I worked with the 5th CST, which is the chemical biological group of Homeland, the National Guard, but they supersede the FBI, Homeland Security, in any of these events. These are the military units that go in when sensors go off. These are the guys that show up in the black helicopters and the big blue trucks, and so and then of course they're escorted with certain individuals, of course, for safety of the crew and stuff. So no, these are guys that know. These are guys that are in the know. So you got to take it. There's enough. Like I've said this all the time on my show. There's enough bad stuff out there. You don't need to make anything up. I mean, there's no reason to make this stuff up because you could, and I do that. I spend most of my day where I go next story, and I go on to the next one. But
I'm trying not to get to the point where I'm like the next conspiracy theorist guy, but I mean, there's so many out there that aren't even just like theories anymore. They've become facts, So it's really hard for me not to report on those things.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, you do a huge disservice. I've always said that there's, the Alex Joneses and those guys out there. So there's no reason for me to rehash it and stuff. I mean, we're actually in the process of changing our format a little bit now that we brought on some professional producers and stuff that are helping us with our show. But
nice.
It's out there. Like, it's definitely out there. I don't want to diminish. I'm not a talking head for the for the guys. Like I said, I'm on the way out. I mean, it has devastated my family's financials. You know, when you cross the government such as I have, and when you depend so much as a government contractor on work and everything from that revenue. I did a lot of private sector work since then, and everything like that. But it's just not the same. The pay's just not there. It's a completely different world. But like I said, our focus is the radio show and getting the message out and letting people know, hey, look, this is real. This is the real deal. This is not, they're coming for me tomorrow or whatever. This is the real deal. This is and that's the focus of our show. And,
well, I appreciate the fact that you've been doing it, and like I said, I like your opinion. I don't agree with you all the time, and I'm sure you're not going to agree with me all the time. I always think back to this little picture I saw on Facebook. It said, when my opinions are like farts. When I say them, people leave the room. So that's that's in some ways that's how it is with me. But I'm not gonna hide how I feel. And some of the things like you said, they are conspiracy theories, and they are way far out there. And I don't want to start delving into that kind of stuff. I just appreciate the stuff that you guys are doing over there, and like I said, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And you know what though? I will say this: all conspiracy theory is rooted in some form of fact. So
yeah, I mean, there's always something, some little gem down there, kernel of truth.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, hey, at this point, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 1:30, okay? All right, here we go.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
And we're back. I appreciate you guys staying with us here. And as I said before, we're on the line with Jeff Norton from the Midnight Patriot of the midnightpatriot.com. And Jeff was just giving us a little bit of history on his background and everything. Are you there, Jeff?
I'm here. And actually, by the way, Mac, I just want to let you know, that was an exclusive, because no one, I've never shared that. Well, I've shared that story with Joe and some of the other routine guests, my friends on the show. But I've never shared that with the public as far as.
Well, that's awesome. I feel very privileged. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Okay, so I had a couple questions here I wanted to ask you, and then we can move on to take listener calls and stuff, or have some other stuff prepared to discuss about and see what your opinion is on. Okay. The first thing that I'd like to add, or the second question I have for you is, if you could change anything in the world, I know this is a grandiose question, but what specifically would you change?
I would bring Christ back. I would bring God back to the world.
That's a good answer.
That's what we're lacking, by the way.
Spirituality, missing God in our life, missing that influence.
God in our life, Oh, Christ, Jesus Christ. I mean, and like I said, you can look at this administration and look at where they're attacking, and that tells you where they're threatened the most. I mean, they are attacking our Christian beliefs in this country. They're actually denying. Look at the post office. You know, they give out the Hanukkah and the Kwanzaa stamps, and then they have a gingerbread home. You know, they tell
the war on Christmas.
Yeah, the war on Christianity. I mean, just in general. You know, it's just amazing, and we've got to bring that back. We got to bring it back to our schools. We got to bring it back to our public buildings. You know, our court systems. I've always said, been an advocate, when people start doing what is morally correct versus what is legally correct, it would be a better place. The world would go back to where it was prior. So.
That's a great answer. Okay, so you know, I'm sure you've had the same experience, and I love that you named your podcast the Midnight Patriot. You know, we're hearing a lot of people like basically use patriot as a disparaging term nowadays. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, patriot, that could be like a terrorist or something," you know, or anti-government type, something like that. You know, and I personally wear that as a badge of honor. You know, I love. You know, the fact that this is like a Patriot Radio podcast. And I'm not partisan. You know, it just right now, I just typically don't agree with a lot of the stuff, especially the constitutional side of it with the Democrats, you know. But I don't agree with a lot of the Republican stuff either. You know, I think they're just a bunch of statists as well. So, but the question I have for you is, what does it mean to you to be a patriot?
That's a hard one, because it's more of a conceptual model than it is an actual physical model. So, you know, for me, is, you know, in the sense, now you can be a patriot in any country that you live in, but for here in the United States that we live in, you know, obviously I believe in the United States Constitution. I believe the framers of the Constitution were a lot smarter than you and I. I also firmly believe, and I was actually watching a special today, that there was divine intervention in the creation of the Constitution of the United States. There was a story that I was listening to today by a well-known historian, and he talked about how there was huge division or divisiveness amongst the congressional members as they were fighting over the Constitution, and it was. They finally said, look, let's take a break. Let's pray about it. Let's take 3 days off. Let's pray about it. And then when we get back together, let's see if we can hammer this out. And they said that, and it's well documented in history, and the gentleman that I was listening to today actually had the documents from the Federalist Papers, from Benjamin Franklin, and Matt, all the individuals, all the players that were there. In writing our Constitution, and they said that when they came back from 3 days after they prayed, you know, they literally went home and prayed for 3 days. They came back and they said that everybody was at peace with each other, and then they actually ratified, or they concluded all of the arguments in the Constitution. So, you know, for me as a patriot, number one, my foundation is God, first of all. Then the second is as an American patriot, would be my foundation is belief in the Constitution. Those words do have meanings. I believe that those words are actually divine in nature, or were given divinely to our fathers. You know, and that's where it starts. And then from there, you know, under the guise of the Constitution, you know, I believe in freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, freedom of, you know, the Second Amendment rights that our forefathers gave us. I believe in, as a patriot, I think it's my obligation, my duty, not the government's duty, to take care of those in my community that cannot take care of themselves. We talk about that. Actually, we talked about that on the pre-Thanksgiving show as patriots. That's our obligation. And, you know, if we don't want government to be invasive in our lives and to take money from us and give to the poor, then we need to, as patriots, step up to the plate and fill that role, because there's always going to be a need for assistance in our communities and stuff. So that's also part of it. You know, but that's the main crux. I mean, do I wish I could be a better patriot? Absolutely. You know, I mean, I wish I could get out there more and you know, hold a public office or do whatever, but it's just the show is taking over my life in a sense. I just don't have the time as you know, your weekends. We do a 3-hour show Monday through Friday.
I don't understand how you do that, by the way. I've been like racking my brain how people can do like several. I mean, obviously it helps having guests and people calling in and whatnot, but it's blowing me away how people are able to do like 5 3-hour shows, every week. That's crazy.
Let me tell you. Number one, I have the gift of gab. I've always had. I've always been communication. When I was younger, I was actually the president of the Young Republicans in my high school. I actually debated Al Gore.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's got a picture of. I got to get that copy of the picture
so
we can get it out there of me. Because I took Al Gore to task, but it's a whole other story for another night. But the thing is, I've always had a gift of gab. But look, I will be the first one to tell you. Rush Limbaugh always used talent on loan from God. This, that is so true. Now I know Rush Limbaugh's work ethic, and the reason why I know is because I'm good friends with one of his writers. And the guy worked very hard when he was in L.A. There's no doubt about it. And you still got to put the work into it. But I will tell you, when it comes time for air, when we go on the air on this show, it's just weird how it flows. It really does. It's just, if you're teaching a truthful message and a message that you believe in, I mean, think about it. You can stand up all day. Look at Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. 22 hours on the floor because he was talking about a message that he believed in. And when you're that passionate as a patriot, it's like you're going to have to rip me away from this mic. And there's many times where I just go, gosh, we got to do a 5-hour show or something. But that gets kind of crazy. And one of the things, though, for our listeners that we are getting feedback, we are going to structure the show so that you will know that there are certain segments that are coming every night. Like, we're going to do a financial report, kind of like a normal newscast. So we're going to structure so you have that. We're going to have, kind of like the joke of the day kind of stuff up there, and then our guests, and then a follow-up. So we're in a process. We have to do that because we are going to go syndication with this here in the next.
I'm excited. That's exciting news. I'm looking forward to hearing the Midnight Patriot weather report. Rainy with a chance of tyranny.
Yeah, that's right. Rainy with well, right now it's the Radcon 5 reports. The NEC reports that are going on with what's coming over from Fukushima over in Japan. That's our unfortunately that is our weather report, but that is a good one. It's raining.
Yeah, that's pretty good though. But yeah, it sounds like you're busy, and like I said, I do appreciate you coming on the show. I've been really, really busy, doing this show and trying to make it better quality, trying to, actually, speak about the message that I'm passionate about. I really do care about this country, and I want to see, good things happen. And I don't want to see our leaders, even Obama. I don't want to see him fail. I want him to succeed in making the republic better. But, I want him to fail in making it worse. So, unfortunately, his intentions aren't really, there. But anyway, so as far... go ahead.
I want to address that real quick, and I know that we have a little delay, so I want to address that.
Okay.
A true patriot does not want to see a president fail. I don't care who they are. They really don't, because when the government, when our government fails or the president fails, the country fails. And
Absolutely.
What better way? And that's the thing is I know there's a lot of vitriol towards our president. Look, I dish a lot out too because I don't like the man either, and everything. But he's still the president. He still represents the country. And when we look like jerks, I'm trying to keep it clean. When we look like jerks to the rest of the world, it doesn't make because I can honestly tell you, I travel. I've been overseas and stuff. I really don't want to go. I don't want to leave the country anymore because I'm concerned for mine and my family's safety. I'll probably go to England, or Scotland, but I won't go anywhere in the deep Europe or anything because, this president, and remember when he said, he was going to unite the world around America again, make America the shining pillar. Look what he's done.
Yeah.
I mean, no one likes us.
We're more isolated now than we've ever been.
Yeah, and that and that's as much as I'd like to blame the president, and I do blame the president for that and his administration. The fact of the matter is, it hurts me as a patriot, as an American, to know that my country has been the source of such ill in the world, and it's just unbelievable. So I think that's a misnomer that we as patriots want to see our president fail. No, we do not want to see our president fail. This president is that, he's a liar and cheat. I mean, we got him. We know who he is. And we know what he's about. And it's kind of like we're just so frustrated. So at this point, we're like, look, just stacking on. But I had a really good professor friend of mine. Actually, we were talking about it this weekend. He said, you guys got to move on. I was like, what do you mean? Because this president's not going anywhere. He's just not. Because of the whole government's messed up, and so he's not going to go anywhere. So you guys just need to start strategizing. And it's funny because this guy's a liberal. I mean, he's a bleeding heart liberal. He's still a friend of mine, and he's like, you just got to get ready for the next fight, and the next fight's going to be, how are you going to fight Hillary Clinton? That needs to be your marching orders going forward. He said, if I give you any advice, and I will tell you, there's certain liberals that are scared to death of her as well.
Yeah, I mean it's supposedly her turn, so we'll see how it goes in the next election. But I'm really hoping that we actually have a true fiscal conservative candidate up there. I'm a libertarian, conservative libertarian. I believe in extreme fiscal conservatism, and I'm more like socially liberal. But I cannot get behind Democrats. I mean, maybe in my youth, because in your youth you're typically more liberal, and as you grow older and gain more experience, you become more conservative and understand conservative values. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, this is the thing. This is the nice thing. Growing up in the South. When I was growing up, I will tell you that and I don't know where they got away from this. And I think they were weeded out of their own party, to be honest with you. Democrats, and a Southern Democrat traditionally was more conservative than any GOP at the time when I was growing up. So, I know they're out there. I've got
the party's been hijacked by this progressive movement.
Exactly, and that's the thing, is they've been hijacked, just kind of like the Tea Parties. We've been excluded from the GOP as Tea Party. I mean, a good example of that is, let's talk about, what was said about Sarah Palin. A newscaster who basically said we're going to defecate in her mouth and pee in her eyes. Where was the arms? Where's the GOP? Joe, if you go out to Joe the Plumber's blog, actually, Rodney Conover, he's running for Congress in the 8th District, which used to be Nancy Pelosi's old district. He wrote an excellent article about that, about how the GOP has basically hijacked and they've moved more to a centralist position, and the right wing or the right leaning GOP members are no longer there. They weeded them out of it. I mean, we do have some stars, obviously, Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and those guys, but
even those guys aren't getting the support from the GOP that they should be, though, just because their affiliation with the Tea Party.
Yep, but it's funny though, because I don't want to. I kind of look at a person and what they believe in, because I do have several Democrat friends, being from the South, who don't believe in abortion. They believe in fiscal responsibility. They don't believe in gay marriage. They don't, so they have what we would now classify as a conservative mark. Still out there, and we need to get them into the fight as well, because you're right. This government has been taken over by the progressive movement, which is so far out of whack with our core values in this country. It's just unbelievable.
It's going to take that Patriot wave to stop them, because they're not going to stop on their own, and they're just going to keep pressing and chipping away at our liberties until there's none left.
Well, this is all playbook. I mean, I tell people they need to read Rules for Radicals, which is a book by Sal Alinsky, and you'll see everything that's going on in our government today is actually written in those pages between those binders of that book, and it's just unbelievable how word for word we are seeing the erosion of this country. And I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that we are marching to socialism.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Rules for Radical dedicated to Satan or Lucifer?
It is. It's actually, yep, it is. It is. He talks about Sal Alinsky. There's 3 dedications. The first one is to a rabbi there in Chicago, which is fair. The second one is to, I want to say Madison, or a political figure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the third one is to the great deceiver, and he actually called him the greatest deceiver of them all, the one that was so radical, that he represents the true radicalness, and that was Lucifer. Absolutely. It was dedicated to Lucifer.
And this is what I love about liberals and the progressives of this liberals that are so far left that they have absolutely no problem admitting where they stand. They stand with Satan, with Lucifer. So, that right there lets you know what side you're on and what side they're on. So, it's a pretty clear divide for me. I don't want anything to do with those guys. So, anyway,
fight ahead of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We got a fight in store.
We're fighting with a group or a mindset or a belief system that has no rules. We talk about one of the things, we look at the war. And our soldiers traditionally, if you think about it, even during the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, men stood toe-to-toe in the field of battle, and they had rules. They had rules on how they conducted themselves. And then we saw, that change. And then, of course, with guerrilla warfare in Vietnam and Korea. And then now we see it, when you're fighting, Muslims and terrorists over in foreign lands, there are no rules. They're cutting off heads. There's no, they're raping people. They're burning people. There's no rules. And it's crazy because we're starting to see that mentality creep back into that evilness is starting to creep into our America, because you've got, think about it, you've got nationally syndicated hosts on national TV talking about defecation and people's mouths and peeing. I mean, it's just crazy. That poison, that evil is coming back, and Sal Alinsky flat out said, do whatever you lie, do whatever you got to do, lie, cheat, steal. I mean, he says this in his book to gain power, and then once you have power, then you can do whatever you want, and it's all about getting that power. So, I mean, that's what we're fighting, America. These are people that are fighting with no rules. If they could cut you off, if they could take your bank account, if they could take your car and prison you, and everything. You talk about loss of freedoms, they will. And they'll lie. And that's the scary thing, is they'll stand in front of the court of law and they will lie, because that's just...
Well, at this point, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in 1 minute, 30 seconds. Thanks for sticking with us.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, TOSHA, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
All right, we are back, and we have Jeff Norton of the MidnightPatriot.com. He's a guest on the show for the rest of the show here, the 19 minutes and 50 seconds. We're going to start taking some listener callers here in a few minutes. The call-in number is 619-924-0986, 619-924-0986, or you can join the conversation by sending me an email at onthemoveshow@gmail.com. Okay, so, Jeff, let me just ask you here. Let me bring this up real quick. I mentioned this before we had you on here. I spoke about it in a previous episode that our government is attacking our freedom of speech. They have a bill that would seem rather innocuous with their name. It's H.R. 347, the Federal Restricted Buildings and Ground Improvement Act. This bill makes it a felony to protest anywhere Secret Service is present. We are now in a time when, in order to speak against the government, it's a crime. It's a felony. You can potentially lose your right to bear arms and vote simply for attempting to speak against public servants or petition them for redress. What are your thoughts on this, sir?
Yeah, that's a touchy subject for me because, number one, it's going on now. I mean, when you get into this show and you start developing and you start getting a voice, I'll tell you, I know, you got your show, but when you start running into people who actually say, "Oh, I'm the Midnight Patriot, I know you. I've listened to your show," and it was funny because I was out at a community event, and a guy we were talking, he recognized my voice of all things. He goes, "You're," and I told Sandy, I said, "Oh, crap, we're in trouble." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because now apparently we've got that mainstream where they're going to start shutting us down, and that surely, I mean, they do that now." We can't post anything on Facebook. We've been in Facebook jail for a week now.
Yeah, I heard about that. That happened to me too.
Yeah, I can't tell anybody about events. We've had the death threats. I know that it's affected my ability now. Fortunately, like I said, is that I have a ability, especially in certain software and stuff like that, where companies use my services, and that's how I kind of feed my family going forward, and everything. And they don't. But I can tell you that the minute they get wind of my political affiliations, I can tell you that once they hear my show, those days will go away. But it is what it is. I leave it in the hands of God. I'm just a firm believer in that. But so it is going on now. But going forward, you are correct. There is a law. Obama's already said that he supports the law, and so people, this is a scary part. Secret Service now travels pretty much with every member of Congress. All they have to do is request it. So if you're protesting, technically they can arrest you on the spot. And the thing is that they're not going to arrest you. They're not going to arrest you. They're going to have your Podunk Police Department do it for them. One thing is, if you want to fight me. Stand square to square and let's go. But no, what they're going to do is they're going to have your local sheriff, they're going to have your local police department fight you, and then they're going to arrest you, and then they're going to leave town. And it's a travesty. It's
absolutely. Well, here I got a clip real quick from Judge Napolitano. He made a quote about this, and this is him on the record for this.
Well, it's a bill that has received very little attention, but may make free speech a felony and seriously restrict your right to political protest. Just signed into law by the president, H.R. 347 gives federal agents sweeping powers to arrest and bring felony charges against citizens engaged in protests where the Secret Service is present. Joining us now with more, Fox News senior judicial analyst, good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, the thing that jumps out off the page, felony?
Yeah, felony means more than a year in jail. This is not like a traffic ticket. For standing and protesting, the type of thing that for 230 years Americans took for granted because it was protected by the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, has actually been abridged. But legislation the president signed last Thursday, supported overwhelmingly by both parties, with very, very little public debate and very little debate in Congress, basically allows Secret Service agents to decide where there are no free speech zones, not speech zones, no free speech zones. And anybody by the Secret Service protected by the Secret Service, can ask those agents to ban protests wherever they are. So I can think of
Okay, so that was Judge Napolitano talking about this. I'm not sure if you heard that or everything involved in that, but we're getting to a time in history where literally, they can take away our right to affect change within our government and even our right to defend ourselves. Where's the outrage? Have you seen any outrage? Where are the people in the streets?
Well, they're too busy watching football and getting fat on sugar and Monsanto grown food. I mean, the reality of it is that it's I'll be the first one to be arrested because I'm not going to stop. I've said that we need to take this fight to the streets, and we need to take this fight to the politicians, and we need to let them know when they're running in 2014. We need to be there. We need to be vocal, and we need to let them know that we're not putting up with it anymore. And if we get arrested, so be it. They're not going to take away my right to own a firearm. I mean, that's constitutionally protected. They're not going to take away my right, and that's what America needs to do. And when we talk about it, and I'm sorry if I offend people on your show and stuff, but I'm just going to flat out say we need to stop putting down. We need to put down the cell phones, and we need to, because everybody's out there with their cell phones and they're taking the videos and stuff, and we need to start, meeting them on the street, go toe to toe with them. When you see a young woman who's accosted by police officers, as I saw in a park. Because she was executing her free speech, I'm not going to videotape it. I'm going to jump in there, and if I go to jail, I go to jail. That's what a patriot is. We're not, we need to start protecting those that can't protect themselves. So it's just, it's unbelievable. But you're right. They can pass all the laws they want to. Doesn't make them right.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, the more I see it, the more I think that we're becoming like the modern day people of Rome. We're asleep. We become lulled into like this complicit state by the modern day gladiator games, like you were talking about. People are watching football and reality TV, and they focus more on the lives and deaths of these celebrities than the wool that's being incrementally pulled over their eyes. The Romans have a saying: "Give them bread and circuses." According to Wikipedia, bread and circuses is a metaphor for a superficial means of appeasement. In the case of politics, the phrase is used to describe the creation of public approval, not through exemplary or excellent public service or public policy, but through diversion, distraction, or the mere satisfaction of the immediate, shallow requirements of a populace. Does that sound familiar to you?
It does. It does. I mean, look. I mean, the reality of Paul Harvey did an excellent article. I need to dig that one up. But he talked about, how powerful media is and how media can influence change in the world. This is Paul Harvey back in the '60s. He wrote this article. But more important, Rothschild, as we all know, part of the Bilderberger Group and the WTO and all of them. I actually have a quote specifically from him where he is thanking media for keeping us asleep, and so that they can implement their change. Look, this is all by design. We're going to have a guest on the show on actually Monday night show. He's an expert on New World Order, just completed a book, and we're going to actually be talking about that on our show. And it's just unbelievable how they have effectively put us asleep here in this country, be it by drugs in our water or drugs, that we take. It's just unbelievable, in our foods and everything. They have effectively put us to sleep in this country.
Absolutely.
And we got to wake up. I mean, we got to stop doing, stop taking their medicine. And, if we know it's in the water, then stop drinking their water. Filter your water. It's crazy. When I first listened to Alex Jones and I heard about it, I was like, he's crazy. I will tell you, when I don't participate in their food system of their drug-induced foods that they put out there and stuff, I feel 100 times better. I'm alert now. I will tell you, I tend to be on the lazy side, so I'll slip back. But there was a time when I was doing my own fresh fruits, vegetables, and everything, and even Sandy will tell you, I was in the best shape of my life. And it's just, we need to go back to that. So
I agree. Well, I'm going to cut to another quick commercial here, and when we get back, we'll see if we get any calls, and we'll answer callers' questions. and then we'll just wrap up at the end here. We got another about 10 minutes of the show. Here we go.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.
Okay, we are back, and at this point we're going to go ahead and take a viewer call or two here. The telephone number is 619-924-0986, 619-924-0986. If you want to join the conversation, give us a call, and we will be more than happy to answer some questions here. Hey, also, you want to go ahead and plug anything that you have, Jeff, for your website and all that stuff, anything that you're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, we do a podcast, the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. It's Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time. We are changing our format, so we will be taking a lot more listener calls during the show. And, the whole idea, we tell people all the time that, the show's just the tracks. I mean, your message is the train. And we need to get more people engaged and more people, into the conversation. And so those are some of the things. But join us on the web at www.themidnightpatriot.com. I'd tell you to like us on Facebook, but we're actually creating our own Facebook system only. So we'll have more news about that as well.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I've had the same kind of censorship on Facebook that you were talking about. We need something else, some alternative that's not controlled by, Big Brother,
Well, we are putting together. We are actively. I'm actually working with the developers now. We are putting together, and we found actually a couple really good clones. Right now, we're putting together the CDNs, the content delivery networks, and the multi to be able to handle the traffic and everything on it. But in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that launched, and it will be a place and it will actually integrate with your current Facebook, so you don't have to worry about new passwords or anything. It will integrate directly with your current Facebook. It's just an uncensored version of Facebook for patriots. Now, I will tell you this: when we say censorship, we believe in free speech. If you say something, you're going to get guys in suits knocking on your door. That's your problem. You kind of use a little discretion. But the only thing we won't allow on there, obviously, is pornography. We just don't tolerate it. There's no reason for it in the patriot movement. There's other areas you can go for that on the web. If that's what you want to do, go knock your socks off. But that's the only form of censorship that we will do. But as far as you can like as many friends as you want, you can post as many events as you want, you can do whatever, and we're not going to censor you for that. If you got products to sell or ideas, you can put that into the marketplace. We're not going to censor you for that.
Free market ideas. There we go.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just going to tell you that. So you'll be the first, Mack, to get an invite and get your products out there as well, because it
awesome.
is a community.
Just make sure you hit me up on that, and I'll spread the word about that on my podcast as well. One thing that I actually want to just let everybody know is that I'm going to be carrying over this topic to the next podcast next week. That will be December 8th. And I'm going to carry over on some of the topics that I wasn't able to get to. We're going to talk about how the government is becoming a giant nanny state, and how they think that they can tell us what's best for us and how to live our lives. So I just want to take a minute here again to thank you, Mr. Norton, for coming on our show. And again, I'll be on your show whenever you're able to. Just give me a heads up on Facebook, and I'll gladly hop on there. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Not a problem. And, Mack, I just want to say, thank you for taking the time out of your life and your busy days and everything, and help getting the word out. We're all in this together. We're not competing with each other. We're not competing. Our whole thing is that we're in this together in any way that we can get the message out. And you're more than welcome to join us on our show and everything. You can get to us through Skype or. We're going to start posting our schedules out there on a weekly basis, so you'll know when we're going to be taking calls. So anytime you want to pop in, my friend, you're more than welcome. And if there's anything I can help you with as far as equipment, technology, and stuff like that, just let me know, man. We're here for you. We're in it. We're in this fight together. We're fellow patriots.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm pretty lacking when it comes to the tech department area. So, before this year, I honestly really didn't use email very much at all. Like I had an account when I was in the military, and I've had like personal accounts that I've had to have for buying things on Amazon and stuff like that. But I didn't even use email, and I didn't have a Facebook. So things out of necessity have kind of grown just because of the situations I've been in, and creating the podcast as well. So, but yeah, I'll probably hit you up. I appreciate that. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. And like I said, I appreciate you again for being on the show. And just contact me anytime you want on Facebook, and I'll gladly be on your show. So.
Absolutely, my friend. Take care of yourself, and God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, that's the show, and I, again, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you check us out next week at the same time on December 8th. We are going to be covering the nanny state and the freedoms that we're losing, how they're banning everything underneath the sun. We're going to discuss dangers of prohibition and, actually list off some of the things that the government is attempting to ban from us and have already banned. So that's the show for today. Thanks for tuning in. I'd like to thank my special guest, Jeff Norton of themidnightpatriot.com. Don't forget to check us out at onthemoveshow.com, or you can check us out here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow, facebook.com/onthemoveshow, youtube.com/onthemoveshow, and twitter.com/onthemoveshow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Need design services? Logo design for $90, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, signs, flyers, promotional products such as mugs, pins, bags, keychains, magnets, and so much more. Contact LaTasha Worley for a quote on your next project at Tasha, Tosha, at lworleyphotography.com today, or visit me on the web at lworleyphotography.com, and on Facebook at facebook.com/lworleyphotography, and on Twitter at twitter.com/Tasha Worley. Show your support for a designer who believes in the Constitution and your rights.